Do you love a good thrift store challenge? Well, this past week, I hit up my local thrift stores and found 15 inexpensive items. And in today's video, I'll be using those items plus things that I already have on hand to redecorate my front porch and foyer for fall. So, if you're looking for ideas to help you create a cozy, welcoming entry on a thrift store budget, let's get started.
So here is my front entry. The iron gates are original to the house and match the Juliet balcony above the front door. I often think about removing them, but they would be a huge pain to remove and to reinstall if I changed my mind. And they do add some architectural interest to an otherwise plain facade. So I'd love to know your thoughts on removing them. So I gave everything a good cleaning. Other than sweeping the porch, it probably won't get cleaned again until spring because I don't enjoy working outside once it gets cold. Other than a few pumpkins, I wasn't planning on buying anything new, but my previous welcome mat was quite literally falling apart. When I picked it up, pieces went everywhere. So I bought this thankful welcome mat at a local store for $20. Some of the plants on my patio are already dying, so I moved a few of the plant stands to the front porch. Then I trimmed my dying hydrangeas to fill in one planter. I put an empty plastic plant pot in the center to create a stand for a real pumpkin. I bought a few pumpkins at Walmart. They were about $5 each or less, and I just arranged them in two small groupings on either side of the door. For a little nod to Halloween, I put a gargoyle head in one planter and his wings in another. I thrifted these concrete pieces a few years ago. I have been wanting to paint my front door for a while now, and since the weather was perfect, I decided to go ahead and get it done. First, I cleaned the door really well with liquid sandpaper. I chose the color Rosemary by Sherwin-Williams, a green shade that I think will be a nice backdrop for both my fall and Christmas wreaths. Since Menards had their paint on sale, I had them tint an exterior paint to match the Sherwin-Williams rosemary color. I mostly rolled it on, but I did use a small brush to go around the doorknob and to get into the grooves. Wreaths are readily available at most thrift stores. My local Goodwill always has several in stock for just $2 or $3 each. Usually they do need a little sprucing up, but this lovely fall wreath was in nearly perfect condition. It probably cost $40 or more new, but I bought it for less than $5. No one will guess it's from Goodwill after I cut off the damaged berries and fluff it up a bit. Since the cushions on my front porch chairs are blue, I'm just going to remove them for now and replace them with pillows that will coordinate better with the new green front door. I'm using pillow covers I already have and filling them with inserts from my patio pillows. For tabletop decor, I stuck a faux pumpkin into one of my patio planters and then just filled in around it with some green and dead stems from around my yard. Now, moving into the foyer. A year ago, I wallpapered the lower half of the foyer wall with paintable wallpaper, added a chair rail, and painted the walls in the color After the Storm by Sherwin-Williams. For the stairwell and upstairs, I used Sherwin-Williams Accessible Beige. Now I want to give the foyer a quick refresh to create a cozier space for fall and winter. I started by adding some pillows to the entry bench. I thrifted this needlepoint pillow for just $3. Although it isn't overtly fall themed, the dark mustard color felt very autumnal to me. I added a previously thrifted pillow with embroidered birds. The color and size of the pillow were just right, so I flipped the birds to the back side. I do still like my light blue rug and will probably still use it during the spring and summer months. But I like the dark, rich colors in this vintage rug for fall and winter. And I'm going to use the colors in this rug as inspiration for both my fall and Christmas decor this year. I thrifted this display cabinet a few years ago, and I think I paid $50. Last summer, I painted it pale green, but against the navy wall, it just looks white. So now I'm ready to paint it again. I took a close-up picture of my rug and used the Color Snap app to match the colors in the rug to Sherwin-Williams paint colors. Interestingly, I found my wall color After the Storm in the rug as well. After looking at several color possibilities, I chose antique red. But when I was at the Habitat Restore, I saw that they now sell Amazon recycled paints, and the sample for their Merlot red looked very similar to the antique red, so I bought it instead. This paint is not made by Amazon, the giant retailer. It's actually a small manufacturing company that reprocesses used and leftover paints. So it's very good for the environment, and it only costs $18 a gallon. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to like it, but it actually went on very smoothly and had great coverage. However, they only have about 15 color options. I had a little William Morris wallpaper left over from a bedroom makeover, and I thought it would create an interesting background behind the shelves. I used the Easy Hang spray and was able to quickly hang the wallpaper. Not only did it add interest, but it also hid the holes that a previous owner had created for electrical cords. At this point, I was realizing that I really should have primed the wood before I painted. I thought it would be fine since this cabinet doesn't get much use. But in retrospect, it wasn't a good decision because the paint was easily scratching. I hadn't bothered taping off the glass before I painted, so once it was completely dry, I used a razor blade scraper to remove any paint off the glass. Then I used a small brush to touch up the spots where the paint had already scratched off. While I waited for all the paint to dry, I went ahead and hung the large floral print and the light back on the wall. These were both previous thrift store finds. When the cabinet's in place, the picture looks like it's leaning against the wall, but to make sure it stays put, it's actually hanging from two hooks on the wall. I hadn't styled the shelves in this cabinet for a long time, so to give it a fresh look for fall, I thrifted several new items. I always like to place my books on shelves first and then add the other largest items next. Then I finish by filling in any empty spots with the smallest items. I spotted this unique wicker-covered Demi John at the Habitat Restore, and I'm sure it's worth much more than I paid. And look how cute it looks in my cabinet. Although I don't usually buy silver medals, I did thrift this vintage candle stand. I just find its simple style to be very charming. I rarely look at, let alone buy figurines, unless, of course, they're birds. But this little guy with his orange scarf seemed perfect for fall. On the other hand, I always keep an eye out for interesting picture frames. This small frame contained a stamped picture of a beetle that I thought was super cute. I couldn't believe my luck in seeing this pink velvet pumpkin at Goodwill. I just needed to cut down the stem and rewind the twine around it, and now it looks as good as new for half the price. I also thrifted a cute ceramic pumpkin with a gorgeous crackled appearance. It's the perfect size to sit in the old doorbell niche, and a little greenery brings it to life. Before styling the top of the cabinet, I realized I needed to apply some wax to seal this paint to keep it from scratching so easily. I chose black wax because it would also deepen the color of the paint and hopefully make the red look richer. I don't want to empty out the cabinet right now, so I'll have to remember to wax the shelves the next time I redecorate the foyer. I spent a lot of time brushing the wax around, and I wiped very little of it off to get a very aged appearance. I wanted to create a large pear branch, so I thrifted a bag of plastic pears at Goodwill for $4. Then I cut a branch from the lilac bush in my yard. To attach the pears, I just applied hot glue to the branches and pushed the pear stems into the glue. A couple of the pears in the bag were oddly heavier than the rest, so I didn't use those. I chose a branch based on its shape, and it didn't really have very many leaves on it, so I cut a few small stems from the lilac bush and hot glued them to the branch. I also used some individual leaves to disguise spots where I could see large globs of hot glue. At first, I placed the pear branch in this large, beautiful brass vase that I just thrifted for only $4. But ultimately, it looked better in the taller, previously thrifted wicker basket. I think it looks pretty good for a free branch and a bag of pears from Goodwill. I put dried hydrangeas in the brass vase instead, and as you can see, I've had these flowers for a few years, and they are really starting to shed. It might be time to dry out some fresh ones. You might remember that I bought this broken clock at the Brimfield flea market, and I still haven't ultimately decided what I'm going to do with it. But for now, I'm going to give it a good cleaning with feed-in wax, which really moisturizes and brightens up the wood. Then I'm going to stage it with some ivy stems from a large bunch that I thrifted for $3. I like cutting up ivy bushes and just using individual stems to add movement and softness to various vignettes. Finally, for a touch of fall, I staged some dried gourds around the clock and added a few inside. I really like how this turned out, so I might just restyle it in a similar manner for Christmas. I don't think you can ever have enough books, so when I see ones that I like for a cheap price, I pick them up. And for a special touch, bundle a few books together with a velvet ribbon. Although brass is by far my favorite metal, I also love copper, especially for fall, and $3 for a vintage teapot was hard to resist. I put some pink and burgundy thrift store candles inside. I thrifted this entire bag of taper candles for $2, But then I decided the teapot looked better with some faux stems. So I found another spot for the candles. I spotted another figurine that I liked at a church-run thrift store. I was drawn to its neutral colors with gold edging and just how aged it looked. I've had this wood piece from an antique piano in several different places in my home, and I've always displayed it vertically, but I began wondering how it would look hung horizontally. So I marked the center of the wall, and then I lined up the center of the wood piece with that mark. I used a level to make sure I was holding it up straight, and I added a nail at each end. Then I added a small nail along the top edge of the wood that I could use to hang a wreath. For something different, I thrifted this metal leaf wreath that I'm going to hang over the piano piece. I think it will create a cohesive look with all the brass and copper on the cabinet. To add a pop of color, I tied on a red velvet ribbon and stuck in a floral pick that came in a $5 box full of stuff from the Habitat Restore. I also thrifted this fall-themed bird picture that I'm going to add to the bird gallery in the stairwell. Because it has 2 hooks on the back side, I used a piece of painter's tape to mark the distance between the 2 hooks and then made sure I applied the tape in a level line on the wall. This makes hanging these kinds of pictures so much easier. It looks to me like I need a couple more bird pictures to put next to it. I actually bought this floral painting at Goodwill 2 years ago. Check out that $1.99 price. I think the red flowers will look great in the foyer, and I want to hang it across the chair rail, so I need to remove the D-ring on the back and use 2 D-rings along the sides and picture wire instead. The wire will allow the picture to hang straight over the chair rail. I hope you enjoyed this fall thrift store challenge and were inspired to decorate your own home with unique thrifted finds. And if you want even more fall decorating ideas, here's another video I think you'll like. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you next week.